What's up, and welcome back to Voth Quality Creative. The first video of this miter saw series was really to prepare the space and get after some long overdue projects in the garage. One thing I made sure to do was mark every stud, wire, steel pipe, and cobweb I found within the walls to make sure I knew where everything was. In this video, I'm going to be making the bones of the miter saw station. This will be the location for all things tools, as I plan on making more drawers than I will know what to do with. The first step for me is to make a kick plate both to serve as a safe space for my toes when working at this station, as well as a way to create a level starting point for the carcass of the drawer cabinets. This first kick plate, I decided just to do a straight cut and will add spacers to the critical points and level it this way. I soon realized I wasn't a huge fan of the way it was looking, so on the second one I tapered the cut to have a more consistent look along the floor. I doubt this will even be that noticeable though. I put the kick plate in place and adjusted everything for level. Using spacers, I could support everything. It could add blocks to specific locations to keep this part level. I secured everything with screws and it was ready to go. Here you can see just how far off the floor the kick plate is though. Since this kick plate needed some love, I decided to create the drawer bases for this portion of the miter saw station. I began by cutting the sheets of plywood to size for the sides and bottom of the cabinet, as well as the supports for the top and back of the cabinet. For this part of the project, I only intend on securing everything with pocket hole screws. I don't want to glue anything together since I like to have the option of tearing things down and repurposing them if I need to later. Once this is built, I think it's going to be in its final home for a while though. But if I ever want to move in the future, I'd like to take this miter saw station with me. I've used these corner clamps in several of my projects. They make securing these kind of panels really easy. I do think I need to get some different corner clamps from this era though. With the base secured to the sides, I could flip it over to add the top and back supports. I decided to opt out of using the corner clamps here. They were being a little tricky. So instead I decided to use a clamp that provided enough friction for these supports to stay in place. With all of the supports added to this base cabinet, I could move it into place and start to get a gauge of how everything would look. Now I just have 5 more to make. And my supervisor needed to check on me to make sure I was working. Dance break! Two down, 4 more to go. With this side complete, it's starting to look like something. I began marking the next section for the kick plate. I'm not sure if you can tell by the video, but this part of the garage has a drastic slope. As I mentioned before, I wanted to counteract this by tapering the kick plate. I think this side of the cabinets looks so much better with a consistent reveal along the floor. I was able to freehand this cut with the circular saw and think it came out really well. Now this portion of the kick plate matches the mark I made earlier. I could then do the same thing to the front to mirror the cut I just made. For the internal supports, I just used extra wood that I had lying around. I kind of wish I had done this to the other kick plate as well, since I had some 1-inch plywood that I will be drilling the base cabinets into later. With the second kick plate complete, I could then put it in place and quadruple check that everything was level before making these permanent. I will have some wiggle room as I get further down the road with the project though. I did have one stubborn corner that was hitting some rogue concrete on the garage floor. I chipped away some wood and then it sat really nicely. With that portion complete, I then decided to batch out all of the side, base, top, and back panels all at once. I only have 3 base cabinets to go, and I'm trying to be as efficient as possible now. And there was a lot of cross-cutting these panels to size. The miter saw station isn't even close to being complete yet, but it's already coming in handy since I'm already utilizing the tabletop. To cut the support pieces, I wanted to be as consistent and as quick as possible, so I decided instead of the circular saw to use the table saw. Once all of those pieces were cut, I went to the miter saw to cut them to size. My miter saw station is currently on the floor. That's just sad. We gotta do something about that. Now that I had every panel piece cut to size, I could sit down and have some quality time with my pocket hole jig. I got to know this thing really well during this project, and it helped me out a lot. At this point in the project, I was having a lot of internal dialogue. I kept thinking to myself that I could really use a dedicated space for all my tools, and I need a lot of organization so that I'll be able to find things instead of searching for them for 20 minutes. I guess that's the entire point of this project, so that I don't have to spend a lot of time working on things on the floor. I mean, look at this guy. He's making a lot of sawdust. I'm gonna start calling it sad dust. Until I'm able to finish this miter saw station, I guess this is gonna have to be the best spot to work. With the hundreds, if not thousands, of pocket holes complete, I can now secure the sides and base panels, as well as the top and back supports. Just a few more screws, and the remaining base cabinets will be complete. The reason I'm doing supports on the back is really to save on material. I'm able to get really solid structural support without having an entire back panel. We'll see down the road how many bugs and spiders make this their permanent home. If that's the case, I may need to revisit this decision. With all 6 base cabinets complete, it's time for me to lock these things into place. I'm using pocket hole screws here as well, since they have a large head and will lock each base cabinet into place. I'll make sure to avoid these when installing the drawer slides later. I'm still trying to figure out if I want to do 3 drawers or 4. I think I'm leaning toward 4 so the top 3 can be more shallow and hopefully allow me to find things easily, while the bottom drawers will be utilized for bigger tools that aren't used as often. To secure the base cabinets to the wall, I decided to create a support from 2x6s that I'll cut down to size. I'm working around the foundation, and I didn't want to custom cut each cabinet since there's a chance these will move with me down the road. When I purchased this plywood, I had someone help rip it down at the lumber yard. The cut wasn't exactly 24 inches, so I decided to cut a little notch to fill the gap of the cabinets in the support piece. I could also use spacers here, but I wanted to treat it like a puzzle. I added screws to the top of the support piece just to hold it in place, and then added screws where they really need to be. I should have moved the base cabinets before trying to attempt this. They kept getting in the way, making this task tricky, but I had worked so hard to level everything out, and I didn't want to have to do that again. Having leveled the cabinets again, it was time to send some cabinet screws home. I tried to make sure each base cabinet was roughly the same distance from the wall, so when I go to install the top, it will be as close to square as possible. There definitely will be some variance though, since the wall is perfect. Also, having this 2x6 support that runs the entire distance of the cabinets gives me some really solid locations to secure the base cabinets. With everything secured to the wall, I was then able to make sure the position of the kick plate was dialed. Once the measurements were accurate and the spacing perfect, I pre-drilled some pilot holes and secured the base cabinets to the kick plate. And now I can add the last screw into the base cabinet. I'm starting to get really excited where this is headed. And now for the piece de resistance. After gathering some measurements from the miter saw, I was able to transfer those measurements and mark the location of where the miter saw will go. I'm using the remainder of the 1-inch scrap plywood I have lying around to span the gap from the base cabinets. When I add the top of the cabinets, I'll also add a top to this portion as well, so that everything will be raised the same amount. I plan on adding a drawer below this portion to hide the 2x4 supports and house some of my most used tools for convenience. I will also add some cabinet doors that will hide the dust collection that I intend to have underneath the miter saw. I spent quite a bit of time leveling this area for the miter saw to sit on. I used several bins to ensure this would not fall to the ground, as well as wedges and clamps to keep everything level and in place. Some persuasion was necessary to make sure it stayed. Before securing this panel in place, I put my 4-foot level on the miter saw and noticed there was some daylight between the level and the base cabinet. I gave it a few love taps and ensured everything was flush. And now everything was level from front to back and left to right. And here I am again quadruple checking my measurements are accurate so I don't have to revisit this later. Now that I am 1000% happy with the placement, I marked out the locations for pre-drilling and screwing into the 2x4 supports. This also gives me some satisfaction knowing that the spacing will be relatively the same on both of the base cabinets. I can now remove all of the wedges and supports that were holding the miter saw in place and hope and pray that I did everything correctly so this won't crash and burn as it falls to the floor. I'm happy to report it's still in place. Now I can have some fun and perform the much anticipated level test. For the first cut at the miter saw station, I cut a 2x4 support piece for the miter saw panel. And with that, the base cabinets are complete for the miter saw station. I'll be installing the worktop as well as the drawers and doors and documenting the entire process as I work on those projects. So remember to like and subscribe if you want to follow along. Thanks for watching.